My name is Lombardo, and I am the CMO at Blockpass. Blockpass is a user-centric, user-controlled identity management application for regulated industries and for the Internet of Everything. But I'd like to show a video real quick. It's an animated video of our platform. Don't seem to hear the volume.
Science form. Get verified and never have to fill one in again. Introducing Blockpass, the blockchain-based, safe, immutable, distributed whitelist of KYC verified identities. Simply provide your personal information and Blockpass will check it. Once marked clean, you can instantly interact with all Blockpass-enabled applications, like opening a bank account or exchanging cryptocurrency in seconds. And after you've been verified, we destroy your personal data. We are providing the foundation for seamless and trusted interaction between humans, companies, and devices. Blockpass, passport for a connected world.
All right, next I would like to welcome out Mir Hawk of Alphia Capital. Please give him a warm welcome.
Hello, lovely people. All right, my name is Mir Hawk. I'm the founder of Alphia Capital. We are a social venture fund. So currently we are incubating 2 projects at blockchain at Penn. I know in West Coast, blockchain at Penn is not as well known, but blockchain at Penn has 200 engineers. They are working on solving the scalability issues with Ethereum. So they have a lot of big visions. But some of the projects that I am helping them incubate and my fund is seeding, one of them is a global philanthropy platform. You know, currently we have like a $400 billion philanthropy globally, right? But a lot of these philanthropy money end up in the hand of dictators, corrupt government, and so forth. And we are creating a platform that would track this philanthropy, that would work. Where the identity comes in is we will have the vendor, you know, in developing countries, they will have a identity, third-party identity platform that will track these vendors and their reputation, right? So it's infrastructure where third-party platform, third-party apps related to identity could interoperate. And we are integrating not just like, for example, I'm from Bangladesh, right? So that's where I grew up. And so if I send, if Gates Foundation sends $10 million to Bangladesh for his school project and a relief foundation, so, it has a lot of famine and other relief needs. So how we track that money, right? It goes to some government, some ministry, and so forth. And we could still have those protocols. We could still have this consensus protocol where, the approval comes from the government and there are, those sort of thing. We cannot completely decentralize government. They will have some role. But how they can operate within a blockchain capacity, and then where the third-party vendors come in, including IoT. If you put sensor in a relief track, then you can track the, where the relief track is going from one point to other. So I am really thrilled. We think we are at a great time to have a social impact, and I'm taking this to Singapore. I'm going to a forum February 4th with Vicente Fox, and hopefully with Jeff Barton. He just did a education ICO, and so we are looking forward to it. Thank you for having me.
All right, next I have the pleasure of introducing Jeff Burton of Bit Degree.
Good morning. My name's Jeff. Just to give you a little background on me, 35 years ago, some Stanford MBA classmates of mine and I started Electronic Arts, which you might know better as EA. And since our public offering, I've been doing nothing but my own investments and starting other companies. About 2 years ago, I got involved with a company from Budapest that was doing an ICO They did it last about 8 months ago, pretty successfully. It got me involved in this whole area. And then late in the summer, I joined a company called BitDegree out of Lithuania. And the premise of BitDegree is that we are going to pay students to learn. The online training courses, credentialing for computer programming skills, and it'll allow corporations to create their own pool of potentially qualified employees. It'll be on Ethereum. It's on Ethereum, and we will use smart contracts so that when somebody signs up for a course, the smart contract will be engaged. When they complete the course, they'll get paid whatever the payment is, depending on what the course is. It'd be up to a few $100s worth of tokens. We know that the online education industry is plagued by the fact that 80 to 90% of the people who sign up for courses, even when they pay for those courses, they fail to complete them. So we're hoping that an incentive of being paid a few $100s to complete a course and then be in a pool of potential employees for a corporation it will be sufficient for them to really join this movement quite furiously. One of the things I wanted to say about our ICO, we completed it in December. We had no pre-sale, no private sale, no whales, and we raised $23 million in about 3 weeks and sold out. Since that time, that has increased in value to $45 million. So we're in pretty good shape right now.
All right, so next, let's give a warm welcome to Vinny of Civic. And we'll welcome up Pierre Wolf, who will be moderating the panel on identity. Let's give him a warm welcome.
You're a winner, and you're... Oh, sorry, wrong panel. Sorry, guys. All right. Sorry, guys, I got carried away. We had a lot of changes in the past. I had to get my stuff back. Hey, great. So, first of all, awesome set of panelists. Everybody here has been dealing with identity issues, is dealing with it in their current business. Some of them are in the business of identity solutions. So I think we'll get a nice perspective across the panel in terms of how they think about this space. So I'm going to start with a bit of a general question, moving back to the state of the world today. We have a lot of, the identity industry is fairly large. Some of you may be familiar with Okta, $2.7 billion company, public company. There's people like Ping Identity, Gigya, and a whole set. And then on the other side, you have consumer solution providers to businesses like Experian and Equifax. And so they're fairly large companies in this space as well. So what I'm trying to get a sense for, at least, and let's start with the guys in the industry. That would be Vinny and Armin right now, and Blockpass. What would be the proxy in the physical world today of the types of companies that you guys see disrupting in this ecosystem? And Vinny, why don't we start with you?
So we want to disrupt the companies that are actually not companies. They're governments, right? So governments are the biggest issuers of identity documents in the world. They issue driver's licenses, passports, you name it, birth certificates, etc. And so when we say disrupting, I don't think it's as simple as like, well, put them out of business. Obviously, that's not going to happen. What we want to do is move it from paper, which is what I think everyone is very comfortable with today, to digital phones and devices, and adding cryptographic signatures to these identities. And you can do that in a variety of ways. So you don't need to have a government ID for everything. If you walk into a bar, the bar might be happy to accept an ID from your bank or from another institution. But essentially it's moving away from physical identification methods.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we're focusing really on decentralization, moving away from most our IDs, online IDs are centralized or federated, and really are not in the hands of the user. And our whole goal is to move towards user-controlled, user-centric identity or self-sovereign identity. A Blockpass doesn't keep any data on the user. The user keeps the data, and the merchant that they're doing business with is gets the data, because they're regulated industries, a lot of these financial services, and that's our goal, is to move away from this centralized government-controlled or large company-controlled, Facebook or Google-controlled federated identities.
Got it. Armin?
I would say the way, at least we see it, and a lot of our partners see it, is less being just disrupting businesses, but being in fact complementary, but removing friction. That's removing friction is the key value add in terms of what we're doing with identity. There are particular verticals that seem to be more apt to adopting the decentralized identity solutions that we're working on using blockchain, and we've been really focused on financial industry, travel, and also within the enterprise. But there are a lot of other verticals that will benefit from it. The health industry itself, for example, is a big one, but I don't think they're as far along. And in all of those cases, it's not so much a disruption, but again, removal of friction. Being able to get rid of things such as username passwords so that you don't have to manage those, you don't have to have call centers where you get locked out, you get people back in, being able to lower fraud and speed up the process. So again, I would say we look at it less so as just being disruptive, but rather being complementary to existing solutions.
Got it. Well, and actually, that's a great segue, because you're dealing in medical solutions. So why don't you talk about that and how you guys think about it?
Yeah, so I think that identity for developing world is a collaboration with the government, because I'm from Bangladesh, and the neighboring country India just digitized 1 billion people in biometrics, because with blockchain, with the biometrics identity, digital identity, you can leapfrog all the infrastructure need. You don't need a DMV, you don't need the clerks, And in the developing world, the identity, the first industry identity would disrupt is the payment and banking. Currently, if I send $100 to my grandma in Bangladesh, it takes 20%. Western Union takes 20%. And that's because if I send in Bitcoin, my grandma has no use, because Bangladesh government doesn't acknowledge Bitcoin, it's difficult to get fiat. But imagine the government endorses your identity and they approves the interoperability between mobile payment and fiat and crypto, right? So I think the government has to be a part of the dialogue, and in my healthcare industry, I'll just close this. Identity is could be very different in the healthcare industry, because you want privacy. And one of the things I'm doing with the PEN project is I'm looking at sex workers in Bangladesh and India who don't want their identity to be revealed. So how we can use blockchain to keep that identity anonymous. So with blockchain, you can have identity to the extent you want to be shared and revealed.
And Jeff, maybe as a different type of application, how do you think of identity as a solution for your systems?
Yeah, well, we had two levels of identity that we were concerned with. The first was the fact that when we started our ICO, we decided we were not going to sell to any U.S. citizens or residents, because we were defined by the Bank of Lithuania as a token, a utility token, and not a security. And so we wanted to make sure that we had the evidence that everybody that signed up to buy any of our tokens in the ICO declared that they were not U.S. residents. We didn't require, we just required their declaration. So that was one level of identity that we needed to deploy, because we need to have that in order to protect ourselves from going forward. But in the case where we're going to be having courses in like C++, we don't want some expert in C++ to be able to take the course 20 times and get the payment for completing the course, which can be up to $500, and then give that to other people who have claimed to be students of the course. So that would require a photo ID, and there are plenty of I don't know about yours, but because we're in Europe, there's a company called ID Now in Germany that provides an online, and I believe they use Skype, ID capability where you have to hold up your passport next to your face and talk with somebody when you are applying for a bank account, if you want to do that online. And there are some banks in Germany that are strictly online, have no branches or anything else. So that's the kind of ID that we would use for making sure that people don't cheat as students at mid-degree.
So look, for the identity tool providers, context is super important in identity. For different businesses, it's either regulatory issues or business issues that mandate the credential. How do you think of your solutions? How do you span across contexts?
So I think with this.
Sorry, and I may be mischaracterizing this, so please feel free to jump in and change that.
Sure. So I think one of the challenges in the identity space is it applies to everything you do. Like there's literally everyone's got a million ideas. We get pitched every single day. We've got partnership proposals every day from everybody trying to use identity in different ways. So whether it's at passport control, your access control for your buildings, verifying degrees, verifying anything. It's such a horizontal play. One of the challenges as a company is how do you focus? How do you nail one category? How do you focus on an area where there is so much demand as well as low barriers to adoption that you can get to critical mass pretty quickly? Because I can tell you now, spreading yourself too thin will result in failure for most companies in the space. But focusing on one area is, we think, the path to success. And so for us, we've really been focusing heavily on doing KYC, which is Know Your Customer, and AML, anti-money laundering, and on a global basis. So how do we allow you to open up an account at a cryptocurrency exchange in 30 seconds and open up at multiple exchanges in one day and transfer the same data which has been validated and verified to those exchanges and make sure that it's legally compliant? So we could be focusing on other areas, but we've decided to focus on that area because we think the demand is really great there. The use case is fantastic, and it's low friction to adoption.
Yeah, we're very much a regulatory reg tech play from the ground up. And our sort of lower hanging fruit for us in the market is the blockchain ecosystem, where we can provide we're founded by regulatory specialists, part of our founding membership, and we seek to bring the blockchain ecosystem into regulatory and compliance, and that's why we're from the ground up regulatory and compliant. And we offer the ability. There's a large backlash, sort of a blowback in the ecosystem because of all these anonymous ICOs and token offerings. And we're here to provide a means to retroactively KYC customers, investors, or customers for that matter, and do AML as well, anti-money laundering. So that's the initial sort of lower hanging fruit is that ecosystem, but we're seeing mainstream interest as well. We're becoming sort of a gateway to blockchain from mainstream banks, even central banks, large e-commerce retailers. So there's a significant potential.
Got it. And Armin, ShoCard's you guys are hitting a few different markets. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on this?
You were talking about regulatory requirements, and a lot of those regulations have been in place for long periods of time, and a lot of the partners that we work with are used to the manner they've done things. So we're looking at ways of interjecting within those. For example, one of the things with banks that's incredibly important, and it's a friction point for them, is KYC. It's very expensive, it's a tough process, they lose a lot of customers in that, and they have to repeat that. Now, we actually provide a full KYC solution where we actually do, driver license validation, passport validation, and all that. But banks, these established banks here in the US, don't care for that part of it. So what they look for is being able to streamline the process of gathering the data. They'll actually do their own KYC because they have their regulatory requirements, and it's very expensive when they actually fail with their regulation. But use our services to certify the users so they don't have to repeat their process. So there are things that we do that are step processes in the overall regulatory environment. There's other regulation that actually is giving us more business. For example, the GDPR regulation in Europe has opened up a lot more doors for us because there are a lot of requirements that existing solutions just don't provide. So it's a mix that we will see, and we will continue to see that evolve as both breaches like the Equifax breach, and a lot of banks have already in the past had data breaches that will actually cause new regulation to go into play, And I think those will actually help us. And there's some existing regulation that we just have to find ways of being able to adapt and work with.
So what makes blockchain technology particularly interesting in this identity world? There has been a lot of companies that have really jumped into it because of this. And what is it doing? Is it reducing costs somewhere? Is it increasing security somewhere? And
it's a combination of things. I would simply say the biggest benefits. One is increased security. Increased security, and I'll just talk about financial institutions. Increased security means lower fraud. And also increased security means you don't have to spend as much human time verifying things. And you can have a higher level of transaction flow. For consumers, there's the benefit of streamlining processes where, whenever you've had like your credit card rejected, you got to call the call center, you got to answer a whole bunch of questions, you got to go through all that painful process. There's a cost for the banks to deal with that, but there's also a cost and inconvenience for users. So it's just making it easier for them to do the functions that they want to do. So I would say, simply put, increased security, easier to use, both of those lower costs.
And do you guys think that there's a rigor to the process, and maybe Laura, you can add, but is there a rigor to the process when you have it in a decentralized model that does not exist in a centralized operation where a company can really decide what goes into this stuff?
Yes and no. Obviously, getting to fully decentralization is not an easy task to do, but as long as you build a proper platform for it that uses the strengths of the blockchain, notably security, as he said, encryption, and immutability. So it's an ideal sort of platform for registries. As we've seen, a lot of real-world execution has been in registries, different kinds of registries, land registry, marriage registry, but we're talking about a user whitelist that can be used as a shared platform for enterprises. So they don't have to spend a huge amount of money on building their own KYC platform. They can share, it's a shared platform as a service if you like a KYC as a service platform.
So if you take blockchain as the underpinning for a global identity system, one of the key things is censorship resistance and then immutability as well. So you want a situation where, if you're having a refugee crisis or you're having a collapse of a failed state, people can move from one geographic location to another and ensure that their IDs are still valid in those areas, and there's nothing that any government or the private government can do about it. So this is where the nature of immutability comes in. When you have a node infrastructure around the world, specifically Bitcoin, which was Civic's built on, we know that the records that were placed there from X number of years ago are still going to be there. We know that birth registrations cannot be fake, so you can't bring if we know that someone's being, like today, for example, in certain countries in Africa, you can buy a passport. You can go and buy a passport on a fictional person who was born 20 years ago, because someone has access rights to the database and they can go and add in a record, right? You cannot do that with blockchain. You cannot go and create a record that wasn't there 20 years ago. And so these are the things which are very important for building a global decentralized system. Making sure that the users are in control of their data, the data sits on their devices and can be used anywhere with a compatible node, and verifying against claims that they're making is critical to a global identity system. If we think that it's important for there to be a standard for identity around the world, we also have to agree that it's even more important that no one entity controls this data. Can you imagine if everyone's ID information in the world was in one single database? It would be the biggest honeypot in the world. And we've already had
Equifax.
We've had the Equifax and Experian hacks already. Your data's already out there if you live in the US, so you just go buy it online. But jokes aside, I think that we as a world, what we're trying to avoid is this dystopian future where there's this one world government where everyone's information is controlled by them. And with blockchain, I think we can get past that. I think we get to a point where it's fully decentralized. Your data isn't sitting on the blockchain. It's not sitting on a node. It's just the hashes that verify that the data you control on your devices is correct and accurate. So to really hack at scale, you would have to hack everyone's devices, which we know is not going to happen. So I think this is what excites me about blockchain. And since we started the company in 2015, we started off with the notion that Civic will never hold your personal information because that's just a central point of failure. And so decentralization at the provider level, at the device level, and at the node level is what we think makes it viable to create this global identity system.
Hey, Jeff, I'm sorry, jump in right now.
I was going to say that from a business standpoint, the business purposes, that's one of the things that attracts us about the blockchain is that the data is immutable and it's unhackable, basically. So, but we also, and I presume this is possible with all of your ID programs, platforms, is that the person himself or herself has the option to reveal their data or not. They can keep it completely hidden, or when they want to, they can reveal it to just to certain entities, people, or companies, or whatever. So it's not like, and it has to be international, all over the world. Everybody has to have the ability to do that. So I presume that's the case, isn't it?
So Jeff, this is interesting because you have a very specific application, and as are your companies. These guys are providing broad-based solutions to solve these problems. A lot of security requirements behind it. What would motivate you to build your own solution versus use the solution that these guys are providing? And by the way, none of them have paid me to sell their solution.
Yeah, no, if the solutions that exist are far too expensive or too complicated or something else, that might, motivate us to do that. But I don't, we're not opposed to buying what we don't already have. Yeah.
Got it. Cool. And how about?
And we are looking for interoperability between third-party solutions. But that being said, I think the biggest value blockchain identity brings in the third world country is now with a $10 mobile phone, Android phone, you can take a selfie that can create a unique hash, like a social security number, right? And now you have identity, and that's great for 2.6 billion unbanked. Half of the world, half of the humanity, right? They have no access to capital. Now, all of a sudden, with the $10 Android phone, they have access to global capital market. I mean, that sounds like a huge leapfrog, and hopefully, it's going to happen soon.
So, I was going to point out, we have, with Blockpass, we have 3 constituents to our platform. We have the user, who in our platform is king, self-sovereign. And then we have merchants. The users are rewarded, incentivized for signing up for additional services, where the merchants have to pay to use the service, but at 30% or less of what the cost would be if they did their own KYC. And then there's identity networks. There is an opportunity for identity networks vertical in various industries to become a part of Blockpass platform and be rewarded also for registering merchants, as many merchants as possible.
Mm-hmm. And look, this notion of the users, getting involved there. So in a way, you guys are providing this ecosystem where the benefits to the merchants enable them to subsidize this really good case for users to be involved. Right?
Yeah, there's a perfect utility token economy there, where the users earn tokens, the merchants pay in tokens, and the identity networks. Let's say you can have a vertical. We've been talking to some in shipping industry or in insurance industry, where they provide, they do their own identity, they use the app, and they support the KYC process, and they're rewarded.
Great. Well, look, it looks like you got the final word. Thank you very much for listening through our panelists here, and thank you guys for being up here. Thank you, guys.